Insights, solutions, and networking all come together at RSA Conference. Join a global cybersecurity community at rsaconference.com/ITSP-MAG24.
Marco.
Sean.
Are you ready for some barbecue? Well, you go to Dallas, you get barbecue.
Why don't you brief me before you go on with this?
That's the whole point. I like to stump you with
so
what the heck
you
is
think
going on.
Dallas, you think barbecue? Is that your thing? Is that your
Yeah,
thinking?
I'm gonna take a quick tangent because I had a really amazing experience in Dallas, and so I'm gonna share this story where I was at a barbecue place, obviously, and I wanted to try a number of different types of barbecue. So I didn't hold back on my selection. Let's just say that. And I went to pay, and there was a gentleman standing on the other side of the hall saying, "Nope, that's on me." And he did that for about 100 people in line the entire time I was there. That to me is Dallas. So,
wow.
Yeah, I was grateful for that moment, and gave me hope in humanity. That is, I'll say, the culture of Dallas, right? Very, very giving group of folks. We're going to talk about culture today. So the reason I mentioned Dallas is because we're doing an on-location event coverage for the MIC annual conference. That's Minorities in Cybersecurity. They hold a conference where they talk about all kinds of cool things, important topics, not just about minorities, but the roles and the activities that minorities have in the world of cybersecurity. So having a good culture is one of them. We're going to be talking to Melanie Ensign and a few others about crisis management, right? That's not anything specific to a particular group. Everybody has to deal with crisis management in the organization. So I'm glad to see that as another topic as part of the event. And today we have Letrice and Dwan Jones on with us, and they're leading a session on culture. Thank you so much, both of you, for first off sitting through my ramblings. Second off, for joining us today and having this conversation with us.
Certainly. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
All right. So I'm tired of hearing myself talk.
Sean already took the time allowed to him to talk, so I'm going to pass the balls to both of you to introduce yourself, and then we will talk about what are you going to do there in Dallas. D.
Absolutely.
So I'll start. My name is Denitra Letrice. Everyone calls me D, so please, if you ever meet me at the conference, walk right up and say hello, D. I have spent the last 25 years of my career in IT and IT adjacent. That means theoretical as opposed to hands-on engineering. And over the last 5 years, I've been concentrated on human development within IT, specifically cybersecurity, and also focusing on what cultures are needed to help employees thrive. Dwan?
Thank you, Dee. And so I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at ISC2. Really happy to be on with all of you to have this really important discussion. I've been in the world of really communicating and helping organizations with their organizational development, including inclusion and diversity, for around 20 years. And so this is definitely a topic that's very dear to my heart, very passionate about how we can change things to make sure that everyone is included, that folks have a sense of belonging wherever they are, especially in the cyberspace. So again, really happy to have this conversation with all of you.
Certainly.
Love it. And a proud CISSP certificate holder. I'll just say that.
Awesome.
My fellow guest here from ISC Squared. I want to start with you, Dee, because you said something that probably slipped most people's ears, but it caught mine. Cultures with an S. And everything that I've talked about is how do you establish a culture? Singular. And I'm wondering, what was it purposeful that it is multiple cultures? And what the heck does that mean?
So if we get down to the consensus, so we have some common language. Culture is basically defined as a shared standard of beliefs, values, what we will recognize, what we won't recognize, what we tolerate, what we will not allow. So with that standard, about 5 years ago, I was listening to a town hall meeting of an executive in a Fortune 100 company that we're not going to name. Just trust me, I was there. And this individual kept saying the word culture over and over again. Our company's culture, our culture, our culture. And I was jotting notes to myself going, I want to ask him to define it. I bet he's having a different cultural experience than his frontline employees are, right? So I do think there are multiple cultures, and as executives and people leaders, we need to make sure that the cultural experience that we're having at our level is the same that our employees are having at their level as well.
Wow, because it's not hard enough to build one culture. We have to establish many. But I understand what you're saying. It's important.
We break down the barrier. Yeah. Hopefully we level set so that everyone from John in accounting all the way up through the CEO are having the same shared culture ultimately.
And it makes sense. I mean, from a sociological perspective or anthropological, cultures is many, right? It's different part of the world, country, city, community. And it makes sense to me that it applies also to the environment where you work. So it's kind of like pretentious to say there's one culture and we're all part of that, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, Dwan, your point on that.
I completely agree. And you're going to have multiple cultures within cultures, right? You're going to have a different culture on your HR team versus what's going to be on your cyber team. You're going to have one culture for, say, a larger team within an organization, and then there's smaller teams under that might have a slightly different culture. But akin to what Dee said, it's all making sure that it aligns, right? So does it align with what the vision that your executives or your leaders have for any particular group? And does that align with the mission, the vision that you're trying to reach? And so that's really where what we're talking about today comes into play. Does it align? And is it getting you where you want to go?
And where do we want to go? I guess I guess I'll just leave it there. Where do we want to go?
So I'll say this. Census-Wide did a survey back in 2018 for LinkedIn that purported 70% of the respondents said they would not work in a company that had a negative or toxic culture. So from a leadership perspective, if we want the brightest and the best, those who are most innovative and prepared to take our business into the next 10, 20, 30 years, we need to make sure that they're attracted to the culture they'll experience when they come over. If not, they're going to stay where they are and we miss out on an opportunity. So that's first, attracting and retaining the right talent to be productive.
And that leads to a good point and a tidbit specifically on the cyber workforce, is that our workforce gap is astronomical right now. We need to grow by 73%. So we might need to take a minute and let that sink in. 73% we need to grow by across the globe. And we're not going to do that unless we attract the talent, unless we attract more diverse talent. And as Dee said, we're not going to attract them, and then we're not going to keep them unless our cultures are aligned and where they need to be. And it's something that they expect when they walk into the door. We're finding that more and more, especially younger generations, are asking those questions in interviews because it's two-way, right? I want to know about the company, you want to know about me, but they're asking those questions. Tell me about your culture. Tell me about your values. What do you stand for? What will you tolerate? What won't you tolerate? Because they want to make sure that where they're spending most of their time, which is, where we spend most of our time, is at work. They want to make sure that it's in a positive and inclusive environment where they have their own sense of, okay, I can accomplish things that I want to accomplish in my life in this organization. And so that's where we want to go is, are we doing that work in the cyber industry? Are we doing that work to make sure that folks can come in, they stay in, they succeed, and they invite others in? Because that's the only way that we're going to bridge this gap.
So it seems to me that with all the conversation I had on the topic, the bringing people in is relatively easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but relatively to retain them. I think that's what the real challenge is.
Yes.
And there is one thing that we know is that cultures do not change fast. It takes time, and it takes action, and it takes, I don't know, understanding, and I can go on and on and on. So I love that in the title of your session, you have the word change. So let's go there. What can be done, Dee, on your opinion? Or what hasn't been done?
So I think what hasn't been done is a lot of conscious thought about cultivating a culture. I like to think of it as the water we swim in the fishbowl, right? And we all arrive and we just assume whatever is there is kind of what's there. But have we stopped to sit down and look at what's really in the water? What's making it more difficult for people to be productive? And we canned this term a couple of years ago and bring your whole self to work. And I think it was apropos at the moment that it came about, which was COVID, and we were all home and the dogs going across the camera and the kids are in the background crying, right? But the reality of what we should have said to ourselves is bring the best of yourself to work, right? Can that be a shared culture? So what we're asking executives to do is to sit down and do focus groups, analyze the experience that your employees are actually having as opposed to what you intend for them to have. Write out exactly measurable goals that can help you attain. And we're actually right now through Mike Talent offering a product called Healthy Working Environments, where we come in and help you do this work, boots on the ground with you. And so that we're very deliberate and we're very focused, and we can measure over time incremental growth, because as you mentioned, Marco, this isn't something that's going to happen from a memo that we send out on Thursday morning and now we're in nirvana on Monday. I wish.
Don't we all? I wish that as well. We could walk in on Monday morning and be in a different place. But I think the key there too is also, is it changing, right? So I have found that, employees and staff, if they see things are happening, if they see that you are changing, they also will stay. Now, if it's the same and it's been the same and we don't see things changing, you talk about that you want to do this, but we don't really see a difference, that's when they start to leave or they quiet quit or those types of situations. So you have to definitely start, like Dee said, you're not going to get where you're going unless you know where you are. So you have to start doing that work, having assessments, having focus groups, but then also making sure that you're paying specific attention to where you're getting that feedback from. Are you holding focus groups with the people, the 20% of the people who are doing 80% of the work? Are you really reaching out to those people who you need to know their opinions? You need to hear from the people that you don't hear from on a daily basis, because believe us, they have a lot to say, and they have a lot to say that you're going to want to know if you want to do this work correctly. So it can't be a room full of executive leaders. It can't be a room full of folks from the same background. It has to be diverse. It has to be across the organization, up and down the organization, to make sure that you're getting that good feedback and creating a safe environment for them to speak up, so that they don't feel like, okay, I can only say, I can't really say what I really want to say. I can only say what's going to be acceptable. Make sure that you're making the environment safe for them to really speak up, because again, you're not going to make the change that we need to see unless you're having that honesty and transparency.
That is a huge part of it. I like to say, is the culture one where we manage you down to your last mistake, or we lead you up to your highest potential?
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you said that, because go on this journey with me for a moment. So I had a guest on, I don't know what, yesterday, maybe the day before, where off recording we were talking about diving, and she mentioned that there are some really great places to go diving and others that are not as great anymore. And basically what she described is all the places that used to be great have been destroyed by people abusing the environment, right? And so the fish suffer, the reefs suffer, they're no longer great. So now we're off to the next place to do it again. So I bring this up because I feel that that's the culture. People move around, some good, some bad. The people that help define it, the people that are the ones that get to live with it. And are there ways that people can spot where the culture is coming from and follow it around and not go diving in the bad place, but go swimming and enjoying the waters where it's lovely?
That's a good question, because I would say, and if we think about this from a personal perspective, in most organizations, you know where the bad apples are. It's just that folks don't really know how to address that. Or folks don't, they're great at their work, but man, our team culture or our team environment is not the best. And so you can probably pinpoint where some of those problem areas are, but there are all sorts of tools out there that can tell you that. You can do engagement surveys. You can do, like Dee said, focus groups. These aren't things that we're saying, okay, just do it one time and then you're done. No, you have to continue to do this. You have to continue to get feedback. And that's where you drill down and really find out, okay, this is what's happening. But then also going back to the point around making sure that you have the right people in the room, because they're going to tell you, they're in that safe environment. They will tell you, here's where we're seeing issues. Here is, some of the systemic things that are causing our culture or our environment not to be the best. And so I think there are several ways that you can maneuver it to pinpoint where it's coming from. Again, I think it's just that, okay, we know where it's coming from, but what do we do about it?
Certainly. And I do think there's some tells, right? Like if I was in Vegas, I would say you're playing cards. I see your tell. How are you recognizing success in the organization? Are we celebrating that openly? When people leave, and this is something that people often don't think about in organizations, when people leave the company, do we celebrate the time we had together, or is that tucked away? And you were looking for Beth in HR and she's just not here anymore, and no one can speak of Beth like she's Bruno from a Disney movie, right? The other indicator is, I'd say, bring in an objective resource. As I mentioned, My Talent offers this service. Have a sit in your town hall meeting, because there are 5 generations now in the workforce who show reactions very differently. When the leader is speaking, you can read on body language the truth of the experience of your employees in real time. Is everyone rigid, like they're afraid to be called into the principal's office? That's a tell. We probably need to do some digging there. So there are some softer indicators as well. And then, as Dwan said, things like turnover rates. Are you hemorrhaging people out the door? That's probably an indicator you should pay attention to, right?
So, absolutely. Before we give you space to tease the session, and I think Sean will do that, I thought about one thing that in branding we say, I think it was a quote from Jeff Bezos, but it said, the brand is not what you think it is, but is what your customer think it is, or what they employees talk about when you're not in the room, something in between that. And I feel like culture is the same thing. You may think you have the best culture in the world, but if stuff happening and is not what you expect to happen, maybe you need to adjust and tune. And I don't know, is this one of the things that you believe the leaders are not doing right now? They're not listening enough?
I have a take on that from my own personal experience, no research, just my professional litmus test of life. I think most major, let's say Fortune 500 companies that are 100 years or older are still being led with a very military-esque, hierarchical structure
Mm-hmm. Okay.
where the leader dictates, we all get on the bus, we go. And your job isn't to point out that the bus has only half tank of gas and the tire's flat. Your job is just to go, right? If we're looking at the next 100 years, if those companies want to survive, they're going to have to start to take some input from those that are on the bus themselves, or I fear they won't be able to sustain and continue. That's my thought. Dwan, what do you think?
We don't build autonomous cars without sensors.
Exactly.
Yes, that's
Hope
it.
for the best.
That's it.
Dwan,
And that's that, those traditional operational styles or traditional leadership styles are still prevalent in, any industry. And so you still have that mentality where, leadership is up here, they're in the top of the tower, and those who are doing the work they don't necessarily touch each other, or they're not in tune with each other. And so I think that's where some of that comes from, is that what they have in their mind, or what they've set out to, okay, this is what we want it to be, now go do, but they're not connected to what's actually happening. And we know in the U.S. culture, especially work culture, everyone is doing 2 and 3 different jobs. And so it takes commitment and it takes work to, okay, let's stop and let's listen. Let's not put more work on, and let's listen to what's happening to make sure that we can continue to survive, as Dee said, into the next 50, 100 years. And so you have to be cognizant of that. You have to be passionate about it, and you have to be intentional that, okay, I do need to come out of that tower, and I do need to listen and figure out where we are, so that we can keep progressing, keep moving forward, keep being a successful organization.
Yep. I like the word purpose, and it can be overloaded for many ways to apply here. Mm-hmm. And one of the purposes of this conversation is to, one, raise awareness for this topic, and two, to raise awareness for the session that you're leading at the Mike Annual Conference. It's March 24th through the 28th in Dallas, Texas. And you, along with Corey Kirkendall, who couldn't join us for this conversation. Thanks for attempting to, though. Anyway, Corey, hopefully you enjoyed the session in Dallas. Your session is titled "What Executive Leaders Can Do to Change Their Company's Culture," with a question mark. And so, give us a snippet what you plan to share and discuss that day. Don't give away any secrets, but give us a sneak peek.
I will say this, as the host and moderator of the panel, I'm going to be probing for what are actionable items that executives can leave this with, that they can put into place immediately based on Dwan and Corey's experience, and how can Mike support them as they further that ongoing journey of shifting and cultivating culture.
And I'll add to that I'm going to be bringing some really specific and intentional key points from our 2023 workforce study around why culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs will lead to better cyber teams and cyber organizations, and will increase your risk posture. So making sure that, do you have these things in place? Because your culture is actually going to lead to better teams, more productivity, and safer digital environments. So not going to give away secrets, like you said, Sean, but going to bring some really great data that we've collected across the globe.
Well, I'm going to add that, Dee, we need to speak about Bruno.
We do. Yes. Here we talk about Bruno, Marco. Here we talk about Bruno.
I'm all about that. So thank you for the Disney reference.
Nice one. Well, March 24th through 28th, you're going to be talking about loads of things by enabling and supporting and empowering everybody in cybersecurity. And a shout out to Mary for organizing that event. I know there's a lot of people supporting her in that effort. I recorded a kickoff episode that folks will need to listen to as well. So if you haven't heard that yet, you'll get an overview of the whole event. And I'm thrilled to have the two of you on. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface. That's the whole point here, right? Just to tease a little bit. But you're both very welcome for a deeper dive whenever you want. So just let us know. In the meantime, if you're in Dallas, go there. If you're not in Dallas, head there. Yeah. Enjoy the conference. Maybe get some barbecue. For me, the cultural moment from that trip was I learned, and when possible, not 100 people, mind you, but when possible, I do a similar thing. And
Awesome.
It's led by example. I followed and kept that culture deep in here. So, Marco, anything else? That's it.
Good.
We're good.
This was a good conversation, and again, anytime you want to come back, I love to talk about this and help as much as I can to amplify this topic.
Yes, yep. Thank you.
So I'll put a link to the conference in the show notes so everybody can find out where it is and when it is and all that good stuff. And of course, everybody listening, thank you for doing so. Please do subscribe, share, and stay tuned as Sean and Marco go all over the place for our event coverage on location.
Even when we don't go.
When we don't go. We get to meet amazing people remotely like this. Dwan, D, thank you so much. And we'll see you soon. Good luck at the event, and keep well, everybody.
Thank you.
Be well.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sean and Marco's On Location event coverage conversations. Please take a moment to give the show a good rating and leave a comment. Remember to share this podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues. Come back for more conversations and follow Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli as they continue their journey toward redefining cybersecurity and society.